Okay, I remember I showed you guys this dent I was working on here, or it wasn't a dent, it was a rust hole right here, and went ahead and sanded a bondo, and I primered this with polyester primer. And what's on here right now is you just take a spray can and you just spray a light coat of what we call guide coat. And what I'm going to show you guys is another method of doing your body work versus trying to sit there and sand your bondo really perfect. You know, a lot of us aren't really good at that. So what you do is you get your bondo, you know, with 1 or 2 passes as best you can, and then you use this heavy primer and guide coat, and then you're going to do your finishing through polyester glazing and primer. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and sand this, and then let you guys take a look at what happens after you sand it, and then do a complete fill and finish on this. So I got my Hutchins sander here. It's a 3/16 throw sander, 3/16 oscillation, and you can get a cheaper version of this one at Harbor Freight Tools. It's called a composite sander. They work okay, but the trigger on them doesn't last, so I got a decent sander here. And I'm using 150 grit, and the trick is you always want a sharp piece of sandpaper, a brand new piece. You know, just buy a box of it. You're going to go through it, so that's the only way you're going to really get it right. If you use one that's worn out, it doesn't cut correctly, and you're going to have waves in your body work. So I'm going to use a DA, and I can do this so nice that you won't even really have any waves in it. You can do a little bit by hand if you want to try and get whatever little tiny bit of waves out, but most of the time you can do the whole thing with a DA if you're really slow and take your time. And you know, it takes practice, but you can do it with a DA and still get it nice. See, these are shortcuts to do your body work a little bit faster. So there's several videos on this on my channel, and you can watch some others. I'm going to show several different ways of doing this so that you can learn how to do your body work to it shorter. Now on your lines, you're probably still going to have to use some hand work on those, but mostly everything that's flat, you should be able to use a DA. The trick is use your DA flat. Don't put it on edge. Okay, when you put it on edge, what happens? That's when you get problems. That's when you get waves in your body work. You should be able to do it flat. So I'm going to do a little bit with one hand to show you what I do right now. Notice I do it in a cross pattern, and then I'll switch to going at an angle. Just like you do with the longboard or hand sanding method, you do the same way with the DA. Evenly and slowly without putting any weight on the edge. Now, I might be able to get this one here done with no additional filler, but I'm not sure. I just have to just work it till it's right. It's a lot easier when you use 2 hands, and it comes out a little bit better. Should hold your sander with 2 hands. You go across, overlap half of what you did, and go back and overlap half of that, half, just like you're spraying it with a spray gun. That's how you do your blocking. Same way you do it by hand. I'm gonna go ahead and fill this and check it out. There's a really small bit of wave in there, which more than likely on a round surface like this roof is not really going to show. So there's still primer left on there. If you sanded it and there's a raw spot, say right here, where you've got metal showing, then you have to stop. You can't keep sanding it. But I'm probably going to need to use 2 hands at this point to get it even smoother. And then what you do at this point is switch to a finer sandpaper, then you're going to get a finer, smoother finish. So the smoother sandpaper you use, the smoother the blocking is. So let's say you're doing something really cherry, you're going to want to finish your blocking with like 600 on your last ones, or 400 depending on what kind of paint you're using. You know, if you're using water based, you have to do everything 600. But if it's regular oil sand, you can do it with 400. You can get a great looking, perfect looking finish with 400 grit. So now this is what I've got when I'm all done with this area. Of course, this isn't done. You always put on 1 coat of heavy primer, another coat over that, and then sand that. And I usually guide coat each one. But this is a typical rule of thumb. When there's no guide coat showing, typically the body work will look good. It's not gonna, may not be perfect. To get it perfect, it has to be perfect. You have to sit there and until you feel nothing. Like I feel a little bit of a low spot. You see there's still a little spot of black there. I feel a little bit of a wave right here, but since this is a round surface and this is not a show car, it's going to be a daily driver, that should look perfect. I mean, as far as not perfect, but it'll look great for a daily driver, and maybe not so great for a show car. If it was a show car, it would, you know, you'd want to see it from with light on the angles and everything else. But this is kind of, you know, the way to do your own car, your daily driver, and make it look nice so that you can, you know, it's not going to look like a wavy piece of junk either. It's going to look good so that most people won't even notice the wave unless you stand there and look for 10 minutes, and you might find it. So guide coat, what that does is when that black finding goes away, typically, as a rule of thumb, is when it looks good. It'll come out okay.